Our next presenter is Emeritus Professor Virginia Hooker from the College of Asia and the Pacific at the Australian National University, who will be presenting today on where is Islam in Australia's view of Asian art. Thanks, Virginia.
How do I get just... Oh. Magic. First of all, as all the speakers have, I'd like to thank very much the Power Institute, the two amazing big organisers, Olivier and Stephen, and their team. Their team's been incredibly busy, so thank you. And I want to thank this audience, which has sat through very hot conditions and had a wealth of wonderful papers. And I look forward to introducing you to a slightly different topic. So I'm not going to read my paper, you'll be glad to hear. I'm going to instead present it as a PowerPoint, which will be a visual version of the paper. And I feel I need to say before I start, and forgive me if you already know this, but in case you don't, I think I need to say it, that Islam is an all-encompassing system, which includes faith, ethics, behaviour, mysticism, cosmology, medicine, everything. For some, a minority, and you would have heard publicly about that minority, it is a closed system, exclusive, self-contained, interpreted literally and in the context of 7th century Arabia. For the majority, however, it's an open, inclusive system which acknowledges that the human capacities, especially reason, are God-given and to be used to better understand his scripture, the Quran. This understanding of Islam makes space for change through analogy so that Islam can be lived in the modern world or the contemporary world. It recognises that allegory and metaphors are powerful tools in the Quran that do not require a literal interpretation. So almost by definition, Muslims who use art to express their faith belong to this open, inclusive attitude to Islam. Right, we should have had that on earlier. My point in writing my paper was to show two things, basically. That artists who choose to incorporate Islam in their works do so within the frame of Islam, within a thought world which is different from that of non-Muslims. Even if they're expressing criticism of Islam, they are still doing it within that frame. And the second point, although contemporary Islam-themed art only began in Southeast Asia in the 1970s, it now has a history and a visual record which is not represented in public collections in Australia, to my knowledge. Even if only because these works are created by those inclusivist Muslims I mentioned, they are worthy of study. But for our present purposes in this conference, the history of the genre and its expression is an essential part of contemporary art history in Asia. So the paper, which you're not going to hear, was written in these 4 parts, and the glory of Islam was to show that this is the usual view that we are presented with. It's the view that most of our art collections show, and thanks to the work of people like James Bennett, it's extraordinarily well done. The second part of the paper was my description of terminology. Sorry, I did include terminology, but I also used contemporary Islamic art exhibitions in Southeast Asia as a way of identifying major artists. I mentioned a system of aesthetics and I turned to the future. But in this PowerPoint, we're going to divide it this way. I'll talk about 2 background streams to the artists, One is in religious schools, as you know, called pesantren. The other is in formal art schools, academies if you like. I'll mention a little bit about women artists and again end with the recent past and the future. So we start with the calligraphic stream. Calligraphy, as you probably know, Quranic calligraphy, is regarded as the most noble of the arts of Islam because it embodies, literally, the words of revelation. This is a contemporary example, 2007, of the oldest type of script, Kufic script, which is used for monuments and buildings. This is thuluth, or sulus as they call it in Indonesia, a beautiful ornate style with dots in it. This is used for chapter headings in the Quran. The basic principle of calligraphy is that the proportions of each letter are determined by the number of stylus points chosen to write the first letter, alif, and here you see the alif with the 5 stylus points, and all letters done on that scale will remain in that exact proportion. I say this because this is a very professional, complex way of recording art, I suppose. Not anybody can do it. One has to learn it. This is the same calligrapher, Sirajuddin, an Indonesian. It's a couple of Quranic verses, the verses of the throne about God's majesty, written in the traditional shape of a circle, which is a protective shield. This is Sirajuddin in the yellow shirt in his rather small and very hot studio on the outskirts of Jakarta. He founded a special calligraphy pesantren, or Islamic school, in the late 1990s. The Department of Religion now recognises it as delivering a 1-year diploma course. His graduates are also taught business skills and marketing. This was obviously a Sunday morning calligraphy class of people who already have jobs, but they still feel they'd like to learn Quranic calligraphy. And this is one of the ways of teaching it on the blackboard. Now we move out of Jakarta to the beautiful countryside of West Java, where the actual calligraphy full-time pesantren is, and we see the students here practicing for the national calligraphic competition. I describe the importance of this competition in the paper. Now, many of the winners of that competition actually come from Sirajuddin's school here. And I'd like you to notice the obvious, that they're working on the floor. They're not at desks or tables, they're on the floor, and men and women are working together. You can see here the styluses. They're the brown objects at the bottom. They're imported from Saudi Arabia. They're special wood. The felt pens there can be bought anywhere. This is a previous winner of the National Calligraphic Competition. That extremely detailed painting he's standing in front of exemplifies seven different styles of Quranic script, of calligraphic script. Each competitor has to complete a work like that on set verses in 7 hours. This is one of Sirajuddin's own paintings. It's incorporating, as you can see, a Quranic verse against an abstract background. It's a verse which is Moses speaking to God, asking him to calm his heart before he has to face Pharaoh or a conference. Certainly the swirls of red, which you can see there, suggest turmoil, and that pool of blue and sort of foaming froth is soothing and cooling. This is a set of 3 paintings by Sirajuddin, which is currently on display at the Art Gallery of South Australia, thanks to James Bennett, where it will be until next March as part of a special Islamic calligraphic exhibition which James has organised there in a special dedicated gallery. Now we're going to leave the stream of the calligraphy learners and the religious school, the Pesantren, and move to the stream of the academy. You might be able to see there in the top, that is the late President Suharto with his wife, being shown calligraphic arts. The point of this is that it's at a major blockbuster exhibition that was organised, there were two of them organised in 1991 and 1995, called the Istiqlal Festival 1 and 2. And if you know anything about Indonesian Islamic art, they'll be referred to continuously. There's a joke between the calligraphic stream that Sirajuddin's in and the artistic stream from the academy that the calligraphers need to learn more art, and of course the artists need to learn more calligraphy. I would like to move now to the first example of a person, the pioneer of abstract expressionism in Islamic art in Indonesia, Ahmad Sadali, who comes from the academy-trained school. Last June 2014, a very large retrospective exhibition of Sadali's works was held in the National Gallery in Jakarta, and Christine Clark and I were both there. They were stunning works, and this is the cover of the high-quality monthly magazine of Indonesia's National Gallery. This was the conference that followed or accompanied the exhibition, a seminar at which I was invited to speak and did so in Indonesian, John. I've taken this out of the review in the Gallery magazine of that exhibition last year. And Untitled, he did a lot of Untitled work, Sadali. Oil, marble paste to give texturing, gold leaf on canvas. This was done 2 years before his death. He died in 1989. This is not the full work, unfortunately, but you can see the texturing that is one of his trademarks. In 1997, there was the first retrospective of Sadali's work to mark the 10th anniversary of his death, so he must have died in 87. The image here does in no way do justice to the vibrant colour or the gold of the original. The title is a cryptic one, Curving Frame with Verses. It's acrylic on paper. It's only 37 by 41 centimetres, and it was actually completed in the year of his death. Now, the verses on the outside of the inner square, the verses around the edge there, are from a prayer which is said after completing the circumambulation of the Kaaba on the Hajj. You will have seen scenes of the Hajj recently, and the circumambulation of the Kaaba is one of the basic things. This is a prayer that said after you've completed going round 7 times, and the essence is, God, save us from disgrace in this world and chastisement in the next. And those words encircle the central gold letters, which seem to be on a triangle etched into the work. The apex of the triangle, of course, reminds people of Allah, and the words in gold about majesty and awe. The outer curve of those blocks are a frame and a doorway, and the door in Islam symbolises entry to the next world and is often used. We leave Sadali and move to A.D. Pirus. Caroline mentioned him as being chosen to participate in the first triennial. He's the most famous living Indonesian Islam-inspired artist, and he succeeded Sadali as Dean of Visual Arts and Design at Bandung's Institute of Technology. And this article is taken from the Visual Arts magazine, which is was a very popular magazine in art circles in Indonesia. In the bottom, you'll see a very small photograph of Syed Hussein Nasr. And anybody who knows about writing about Islam knows that he's a very famous figure. He enjoyed visiting both Kuala Lumpur and Indonesia. He admired the thinkers there, and they in turn learnt much from him. These are the words of Pirus, who left Sumatra to study art in Bandung and the USA, and while in America, he rediscovered his Islamic roots and traditional Achinese art, and we have a specialist on Achinese traditional art in the audience, Dr. Barbara Lee. This is an interview with Ken George, and it's worth mentioning that Ken has a very unusual partnership over several decades as an anthropologist who has studied both the art and the subjectivity, I suppose, of Pirus, and the partnership began in the late 1980s. Ken George is now almost the mouthpiece for Pirus in the West, or outside Indonesia. This is two photographs I took of Pirus in his lovely home studio last year when I visited him in Bandung. He's 82 or 83, and he was pretending to jive on the floor. I think he'll be with us for many years to come. Part of my purpose in showing this was not just his eternal youth, but the fact that he's got a very Western-looking library behind him, and he's sitting at a table. He's an academy-trained formal art school person. Now, inexplicably on its side, please reverse it in your vision, is the work that Pirus lent to the first APT. The Quranic verse refers to the final earthquake that will signal the end of the world and bring Judgment Day, when the cataclysmic force, which you can see rending the worlds apart there, will throw the dead from their graves, and good and bad deeds will be weighed for the final judgment. And this deep aquamarine is one of Pirus's favourite colours. One might think that these Islam-inspired artists are socially disengaged. Quite the opposite. When they can, they produce works which indicate deep social engagement. And by the early 1990s, even Indonesians could not refrain from criticising their president and his family in particular. So for the second Istiqlal Festival, which attracted, I should say, an audience of 11.5 million viewers in 1 month, 11.5 million. So he hung this painting entitled in Indonesia, An Admonition to the Leader, it was seen by the President but remained uncommented on. I thank Ken George for this image. So it's got a very pointed title, and he chooses Quranic verses, which you can faintly see there, about God's omnipotence and his awesome power, the fact that God gives sovereignty to whomsoever he wishes and likewise removes it, that he has the power to merge night into day and day into night, and has power over life and death. Now the size was awesome. It was 2 meters by 2.5 and had beautiful application of gold leaf. You can see there, probably faintly, the stars in the sky, perhaps referring to that merging night and day, rocks, mountains, caves, and grave markers, all of which are 5 minutes left. We'll speed up. We'll reluctantly leave Pirus's work and move on to a more contemporary exhibition, which was in 2011. 300 entries, including Pirus and Sirajuddin, were shown in this exhibition. This was one at the entry. This is a massive bronze, apparently seed capsule, on which you can see a leaf emerging and scratched across it the alif, which I think is reminding us that out of apparently nothing, God's regenerative powers, creative powers, can bring life. We're now going to move to Malaysia, another person that Caroline has mentioned, who had work selected for the first APT, and it was actually purchased, I understand. If you've had time to read that, you're a speed reader. This is the work I just wanted to briefly mention. I've described it at more length in an Art Link, a volume of Art Link Art magazine in 2013. It's a choice of a garden, for those of us who love gardens, of course linked with paradise, rich in allusions to peace, beauty, afterlife. Complex motifs and colours, and reference to the principles of sacred geometry, which Muslim artists took from Plato and Pythagoras to reflect perfection of the golden mean. And I won't describe how it was assembled, but it was assembled with great care. In the paper, I describe two exciting female artists, one of whom you might have seen in Australia, the Indonesian Arahmayani, and also Tita Ruby, whose work I had the pleasure to see in SAM last year. A very big installation which I quote the catalogue description that SAM, a beautiful catalogue description that SAM published of the installation. But here we will talk about Sharifa Zuria, who's a Malaysian. She, as you saw, is a very experienced, travelled, cosmopolitan woman. In the early 90s, she was deeply moved and outraged by the atrocities referred to here against Muslims in Bosnia. She turned to the Quran for comfort, and 7 chapters, 40 to 46, talk about forgiveness and belief. Their signature letters are Ha, big thing, and Mim, which she's put on top of every painting. You can see the turmoil, the blood, the despair in these works. I wanted to briefly mention somebody who studied in Australia. He studied for his Masters with James Bennett. He studied for his PhD at the ANU. He's now back in Malaysia, and he was inspired, he was rediscovering his own Malay past as well. And so this is one of his works hung at the ANU in May this year, inspired by a Malay poem about the loss of direction for Malay people in Malaysia, very applicable today. And he used digital images of ancient grave markers, behind which he put coordinates with no proper references, and printed on a letterpress. This is the last slide. Sulaiman Acer did it with his son Fairuz, who is, as many young Indonesian and Malaysian people are now, they are using IT technology for the most incredible graphic work. So Fairuz did the Abu Ghraib and other dreadful images. The theme in the gallery where this large work was installed in 2011 in a retrospective, is the endangered garden, referring to the planet. And on the wall are words calling to both Muslims and non-Muslims to be wary of Western cultural hegemony, which is threatening religious and cultural traditions. On the floor, surrounding those horrible scenes, are interfaith symbols of Muslim prayer mats and Quran reading stands with Buddhist lotuses. So it's stark, contemporary, condemnatory, but perhaps with the message that with interfaith cooperation, maybe there's hope. I finished my paper. I have to do this for John. The the paper, the written paper, the last sentence is, the bigger regional and international picture of contemporary Islam-themed art is waiting to be told. To do it will require, as John Clark has said, collaboration of art historians, artists and curators. Where will we find them for this challenging field? Thank you.